Hi, this is Janet, and welcome to Writing Wednesday. Um, Today, I thought I would talk about uh, writing sex in fiction. Um, Sexuality, especially women's sexuality, has been has taken a long, winding path. To where we are today. And it's if anybody's been in a writer's group and has tried to write sex scenes and has been told that it just wasn't, it just wasn't making it. It's often a there's a micro and a macro uh, issue when it comes to writing a sex on the page. Um, the macro issue is often that um, people forget that it's still a scene and it still has to um, do this, provide the storytelling issues. It still has to fulfill the function of a scene, which is that there is a change in the protagonist where they cannot go back to the way it was before. So it's not a gratuitous thing that you throw in like a doily on a table or something. Um, it's not just a timeout from the action of the book. It has to be dramatic action, even in a sex scene. It's still a scene. So if you just seize your mind around that, it's got to do all the things that the scene must do to advance the story. Action, the forward movement of your story cannot stop, and then the characters have sex. That's not good writing. And when people talk about it, it seems like the sex is just thrown in. That's what they mean. It doesn't have anything to do with the story. It doesn't advance the story in any way. It doesn't illuminate character. It doesn't do much. Characters learn something that they wouldn't have known otherwise. So it's always a scene. You always have to do something with it. It's not just people getting it on. Because this is sex on the page. This is part of a longer work. It has to do something emotionally, dramatically. You find characters find out something about themselves, about the other person. Um, or the reader finds out something about them. So it does not go from, you can't go back out the door you came in. On the micro level, poor sex writing on the page is okay, so it doesn't do anything for the story, it doesn't reveal anything, it doesn't change anything. And then on the micro level, it's things. The worst sex writing is if your writers group says, well, it's kind of porny, you know it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with having very explicit sex in a sex scene. I'm kind of, for it. Um, but it means that it it it's about body parts doing things. Body parts in fiction are not. That's not. That's not how. I mean, that's how porn works, but it's not how erotic fiction works. It's not how an erotic scene works. So try to keep it from being porny. The people have sex, not this body part, that body part. That people have emotion, people have sensations, people have if you keep the body together rather than parting it out, you're going to have a much more successful sex scene than otherwise. People Some people don't like to see sex on the page, but I think it's the most charged, dramatic theater that there is the theater of sex, where you really can get to where people live. Your deepest physical sensations are going to be in a sexual situation, most likely. The skin is an actor, and to write to write a good sex scene, you have to. It helps to become, and there are exceptions to everything I'm saying. So if you decide that this doesn't apply to you, great, But I thought I would say something that generally is helpful. So is that great sex scenes, it's the sensuality of the writing. The sensuality is a way of being in the world. It's not just sex. And I think that helps writers a lot to think about opening their character to the sensuality of everyday life. The sensuality of sun on the skin, the sensuality of clothing across the skin. Think of all five senses. What does a lover see when they see the beloved's body? What do they see? How do they apprehend? One of the great sensual novels to see that would be Jeanette Winterson's Written on the Body. It's about a woman or an unnamed person having a love affair with a married woman, and just the way the lover's body is described, because love is about attention, and the more attention your POV character lavishes on the other person, the closer we are to their emotions, the closer we are to the excitement of the interaction. A lover observes everything, just like the lover's body becomes a landscape, and all the things that you do with landscape, you can do with the body. All the things that light can do, the way light is falling on their body across even a collarbone, or the description of their ear becomes, a vast landscape, because that's how much attention a lover will pay to the beloved. So watch the amount of and the kind of loving attention that is focused on them. Not only that, but it's a sensual way of looking at the world. I was recently at AWP and was at the last minute, asked to join a panel about women writing about sex and intimacy. And so this is an instance of, people are always saying, oh, luck is being at the right place at the right time. But in fact, being at the right place at the right time means showing up even if nobody asks you to. I just went to AWP. I had no panels or anything. And so my luck was, if I had stayed home, that luck would not have been there. So I was very lucky. I got called if I could join this panel on love and sex and intimacy. And one of the things that we were talking about is how sex begins to appear in, especially women's writing, women heaped with scorn for, being filthy, dirty, putting this, what Henry Miller had to face in the 30s, women were dealing with in the 60s, 70s for writing about sex. And some, but it's that that willingness to really investigate. I've, even as recently as a couple of years ago, my book came out, The Revolution of Marine. Actually, every book that I've had has been criticized for the sex in it. But every sex scene has a purpose, and it's about an interaction between the characters, and things happen that would not have happened if I had not had the sex scenes in them. Evidently, Anne Sexton, when her poems first started to appear, extremely erotic, that she was really a lot of ridicule, a lot of negative reviews on her for writing about sex, and her, she is a very sexual person, and I love this poem, so I'm going to read it. I read it at AWP. Let's see. Anne Sexton, where are you? There she is. I took her out. This is one of my favorite Anne Sexton poems. And look at the way she talks about sex. This is, it's from, she has a collection called Transformations where she retells fairy tales. And this is the retelling of the tale of the peasant, the little peasant. And this is how it begins. Oh, how the women grip and stretch, fainting on the horn. The men and women cry to each other, touch me, my pancake, and make me young. And thus, like many of us, the parson and the miller's wife lay down in sin. The women cry, come, my fox, heal me. I am chalk white with middle age. So wear me threadbare, wear me down, wear me out, lick me clean as an almond. The men cry, come, my lily, my fringy queen, my gaudy deer, salt me a bird and be its noose, bounce me off like a shuttlecock, dance me, dingoes sweet, for I am your lizard, your sly thing. Oh, that dance me, dingo sweet, lick me clean as an almond. I mean, she was excoriated for that kind of writing, and that's, I believe, in the late 60s, early 70s. Definitely Winterson, to read some of this, just how closely the lovers observed, and thoughts about love. Just, she can, we talk about moving to the big issues. She moves to the big issues. Frighten me. Yes, you do frighten me. You act as though we will be together forever. You act as though there's infinite pleasure and time without end. How can I know that? My experience has been that time always ends. In theory, you are right. Quantum physicists are right. The romantics and the religious are right. Time without end. In practice, we both wear a watch. If I rush at this relationship, it's because I fear for it. I fear you have a door I cannot see, and any moment now the door will open and you'll be gone. Then what? Then what? As I bang the walls like the Inquisition searching for a saint, where will I find the secret passage? For me, it'll just be the same four walls. So she moves to the big issues even in a sex scene. A wonderful book for the sensuality of the prose, and that lover's eye is is They Whisper by Robert Olin Butler. I love this book. Not many people have read it, so I don't know why. It's the sensual man's eye, as he's in love with his wife and he's in love with everything about her, but he also notices other people and remembers other people, so he could be, you know, with his wife and then go back in time, or see just the cast of a woman's face, and immediately it links in memory to something else. There's a most wonderful thing in here about, I should have marked it up ahead of time, where he notices there's something he remembers seeing, the x-ray when he was a little boy. He sees the x-rays of a little girl's feet in those Buster Brown x-ray machines. Some of us are older and remember when you still, you know, could put your feet in an x-ray machine at the shoe store and see your feet. And he sees the intimacy of seeing this little girl's, when he's a little boy, but seeing her, the bones of her feet, seeing through her. Not, I mean, people have dreams of being able to see through people's clothes, but seeing through their skin. You know, that's intimacy, and that's desire. Oh my God! And it sets this, you know, it sets the tone for the whole book. That seeing all the way through and wanting to see more and more and more. That is a beautiful book. I used to be I used to work for American Film Magazine, and I did a lot of interviews with people. And one of the interesting interviews I had was with Samuel Goldwyn Jr. On the 50th anniversary of the release of Gone with the Wind. And I asked him what makes for that kind of a hot love scene. You know, what makes for love story that, you know, resonates through the ages. And he always says that he said that it's what keeps the lovers apart is what builds a love, you know, a love story like that, which I think is really interesting. One of the most erotic stories I've ever read was from somebody in a friend of mine from a long ago writing group. I still remember she wrote a story, an erotic story, about a woman, a language teacher, who gets in the elevator of a building, and this man gets in the elevator with her. And it's just the elevator ride. And she is so attracted to this guy and doesn't do anything about it. But the fact that she doesn't do anything about it almost makes it hotter. It's just blistering what she can do, you know, just being near somebody. You're extremely conscious of your attraction to them. And that's a good exercise for this. You know, just stand next to someone, have your character stand next to someone and just closely observe and feel that attraction. And, you know, her character is very prim and would never say anything. You know, this nice lady would never say anything to a guy like that. But nevertheless, the thoughts, the proximity, you know, is so compelling. So, you know, don't part out the body, you know, let the whole person have desire. Watch the other person, smell, use all the senses, the layers of landscape, as if they were a landscape. How would you describe them? How is the light falling on them? You know, if their hair was a forest, you know, what would it be to walk through that forest? So they're, you know, those are fabulous ways to use a sex scene or to build that erotic charge. We remember the good sex scenes in books. I remember seeing The Godfather. I mean, my parents had it, not the movie. I didn't see the movie till years later, but they had the book, and the book was the library. The book was all over the place, and every single copy of that book would open to the scene of Sonny, the lusty second son, you know, having sex with one of the bridesmaids up against a door in a bedroom upstairs, during the wedding ceremony, during the reception. And it was so hot, and everybody, it just falls open. That's what you remember, of the probably of that novel. That is probably one of the more memorable scenes. Henry Miller, when he writes about sex, I know, a lot of people don't want to write such profane kind of stuff, but there's a joy in it too. I mean, his sex scenes are just crazy. Most of it internal, of what he wants to do to his partner. And that is Tropic of Cancer. Definitely take a look at that. It's not terrifically feminist, but you can appropriate methods, I find the desire in the Alexandria Quartet, the characters' love for a character, Justine, especially in the first book, is extremely charged. And I pulled something else out. Oh, The Lover by Duras. Now, Duras is a very cool-toned writer. She's a French intellectual, and the writing is very cool, but she certainly knows what desire feels like. And in this case, it's a girl who is desired. She has a very complex response. Her lover is a wealthy Chinese young man. She's she's a French girl living in Vietnam. And she is so aware of the class differences. It's like she's poor, he's wealthy, but in the colonial mind, that he owes her something because he's Chinese and she is French, the colonial power. So there's a really interesting dynamic that goes on here. And this girl's very young, she's 15, but she already understands like the layers of what's going on. And there is a scene of her and her lover having sex in a room that's only divided from the street by louvered doors or screens, and so it's like having sex right in the street, and extremely well done. And it's not just an aside. That's what the novel is about. It's about those issues. So I urge you to give it a try. You can make it as explicit as you like or not, but try to keep the body together. Try to use the senses, especially the skin. Think of the landscape, the body as a landscape within the landscape. When you think of Madame Bovary going through her lover's things, his room becomes highly eroticized because her emotions are so high and her observation becomes so keen. Give this, I would definitely give this a try. Who else does really good? Really good sex scenes that pay off, that do something. It's just they have to they're part of your character. They have to do something. I think Graham Greene in The Quiet American, the love scenes are really important to the story, and of course, beautifully done, beautifully done. Who else do you think writes good love scenes, sex scenes? Please do not describe his tumescent member. This is a tough one. What to call sexual parts, you have to be very sensitive to the difference between, do you want her to say, refer to her vagina, to her cunt, to my crotch, to my woman part, You have just to be really careful of, the cringe factor. And the cringe factor can be in any place. It's something that you often change and change again and change again, really calibrating and getting it right. It's worth getting it right for yourself and for the tone of the book. Otherwise, it just throws us back. It's like when a full-grown adult, calls, pee-pee, poo-poo, that throws me back. It's like, I thought they were, the tough guy is, goes pee-pee. It's like, really? I don't think so. And so it takes some calibration. So you figure out the level of, it's like a level of diction at all times. What level of diction do you think is appropriate to your to your fiction, and be improvisational with it. You can have fun with it. Some people are into naming their parts, and depending on if that supports your character, that can be very funny or very charming. But sometimes it's cringe. It's the cringe factor. You definitely watch out for the cringe factor. Sometimes if it's the desire of somebody who's very prim, that's an interesting one. And how are they going to refer to their lover's parts, or will they? So what else can I tell you about sex? Writing sex scenes. I am very, when a character, I read a book recently that was all about the desire and fascination this woman has for a man, a very influential person and very charismatic, and she's just hypnotized by him, and we know that she ends up, having his child. And with all that desire, and with all that, the compelling plot line of her desire for this guy, there is no sex scene. There's not one actual sex. And then first they go back to the room, and then they wake up in the morning. And it's just like, are you kidding? I have read 200 pages of this thing, and we do not have sex with this guy? I mean, that was clearly, other things were being shorted as well. This writer did run out of gas and did not pony up. That's what I call entrance. This is like the classic entrances and exits problem, is that it's all set up, and getting into the scene, and then you don't actually have the scene. You gotta have the scene. So we have to learn how to do this. It's really, really important to learn how to write a sex scene that is believable, that is not cringe-worthy, that hits the diction right for that book. that dramatic action happens during the sex scene, that there's more than just having sex. It means something, or you don't need it. E.L. James, a master of erotic literature. Huh. I have not read her. Anais Nin is extremely internal. But her Spy in the House of Love, her books, they're about sex. They're about attraction. They're about sex. But she is much more interested in the emotion rather than in the sensation. She's not as it's not about the sensation as much as it is about the emotion. It's a different way of writing a sex scene. Oh, she wrote 50 Shades of Grey. Yes. You know, the less said about that, the better. There is a wonderful book a student of mine just wrote called Permission. It's it's about a woman who falls in love with a dominatrix who lives across the street. And that's a fascinating look into the theater of sex with the sliding doors that it has. So if there are no other questions, I will wish you the best, and feel free to, if you think of any questions for next week, I'm happy to start writing them down, answering them. And if you're enjoying these videos, I've got to say that the sex scene in White Oleander, where she simply gave the boy real sex, love that. She has sex several times in that book and has a different kind of attraction to each one. They each have a different feel, and they all have consequences. So you use the sex scene. You just don't, entertain the reader and yourself by throwing some sex in there. That's not how it works on the page. So if you like these videos, something that you could do for me if you are up for it is pre-order my new book, which is Chimes of a Lost Cathedral. I think I have there she is, very pretty. It's coming out in July, but the pre-orders count. So if you want to give me a Mother's Day gift or writer's gift, pre-order my book. All right. Well, wish you all the best and good writing. Okay. Bye.